Hey everyone, welcome to another segment of Urban Wine Club's Sip Clips. I'm your host, Foti and with me, my sidekick, Ari Kalos.
I told you never to call me that. I'm your, I don't know what. It's like,
You're my other half. You like that better?
I'm your better half, like your wife.
Yeah, buddy. But here we are again, getting together, talking about wine, learning, enjoying, experiencing, and exploring.
Yes, and
And
it's
as
a
we're
it's a
drinking,
it's a nice time. I think right now we're kind of changing seasons. We're going from warm to
cool.
cool. I don't want to say cold yet, but cool, chilly,
Well,
nice.
up in New England here, that can be sort of tricky. We can go right from hot to cold and
Yeah.
bypass the cool. But in any event, yes, the seasons are definitely changing. I'm noticing that my lawn is filling up with leaves already. You can kind of sense the scent in the air, that autumn-like feel is already here. The days are unfortunately getting shorter.
Yeah, man. I wish they would just like end that daylight savings time stuff and just let us have a little bit of a longer day. But
Right?
what can you do?
So we've been, for the last, from 2 weeks ago, we've been sipping on some pretty refreshing white wines, rosés, sparkling light reds. But now that you feel that crisp, chill that's coming around, it's definitely that time where we kind of want something a little warmer, richer, and deeper,
Yes.
right? So the segment here is basically to recommend to our audience, as the seasons change and you're feeling different, what would be a good fit? And basically, what we want to kind of bring to the table or to the glass is that we're going to talk about wines that we feel really connect with you when the weather changes.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's both whites and reds. It doesn't mean that because the weather gets cold, oh, we're going to stop drinking whites
Yeah,
and
but
we're
the
going to
general
drink red.
consensus of most people is yes, you stop the white when it gets cold.
Yeah, it's psychological because it's been done over and over that way, but I want to change that opinion or that thought process where there's plenty of white wines that really fit when it's cooler outside, and there's
Hmm.
plenty of great red wines that are in between. So you don't need to go really heavy and deep just yet. We can talk about wines that we feel like are great as that transition happens.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
I believe you. I need to experience this myself before I start busting out some whites when I'm really cold. But I'm sure you could steer me in the right direction.
I have uh, 50% of the time. But all right, so let's talk a little about what is it that actually makes it feel that we should be trying something different. Temperature, whether it's outside or whether you're inside, definitely has a significant impact on you. We talked about psychology, the fact that days are getting shorter.
Mm,
There's a little more overcast, tends to get a little rainy this time of year.
yeah.
Um, that definitely has an impact. So not to get gloomy, but at the same token, all this affects us chemically, and our taste buds also change chemically as well. So what's important right now to really make that connection are textures and flavors. So when we want to talk about textures, we're saying that we want to consider and try wines that are a little bit fuller. So white wines in the summertime, we were drinking a lot of what? We were drinking Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Grigio, some dry Rieslings, and that's because they're very light in structure.
Hmm.
They're crisp. Now, the thought process is we want to go to something that's warmer. And what dictates a warmer wine? Wines that have textures that are rounder, supple, smoother, silkier, if that helps kind of paint the picture in your mind.
That's how you usually describe me.
All right. Rounder, right?
Silkier,
Smoother. It's all about the
supple.
textures.
Yes.
The wine rolls off your palate.
Yes.
But in any event, that texture kind of fits when something is cooler outside.
Hmm.
When
It
something
does.
is the
Yeah.
opposite, when something is warmer, when the environment's warmer, you're looking for that refreshing crispness. So having said that, what are wines that are white, that are richer, smoother, rounder? Uh, Number one, the classic example is Chardonnay. So Chardonnays, I think, for those that are on the fence about them, or some of them, some of us don't drink them as often, this is a time of year actually to explore and appreciate Chardonnay, because it has the composition that really suits the season,
Interesting. Okay. I mean,
right?
I like Chardonnay. Yeah, I could see myself.
Well, let's put this into perspective. Chardonnays are known for, well, California Chardonnays are known for two very key characteristics: oaky and
Hmm.
buttery,
Yeah.
right? So those two characteristics really fit well with the season that we're in. We're in October right now, right? So
Yes.
October is, pumpkins, pumpkin
Hmm.
spice, vanilla, um, all these, autumn-like spices that kind of connect and relate to what's happening with Chardonnay. The buttery, the creamy element that's in Chardonnay. You know, if you haven't really uh, had a liking for Chardonnay, I would recommend, why don't you try it now when the weather is in this state, where take what I just mentioned to you and kind of roll with it.
Okay.
I think psychologically it will definitely change your perspective. So Chardonnay,
Interesting. Yeah.
California Chardonnays definitely is. This is a time of year to get into them. Other whites that are in that same wheelhouse of structure and flavor. We talked about this in a previous segment. Pinot Gris,
Mm.
which is that grape that's also known as Pinot Grigio. But Pinot Gris are also white wines that have a little more texture, and they're rounder and they're smoother. Uh, so some points of locations where to get them from is either the north of France in Alsace, or in Washington and Oregon State.
Okay.
Washington State and Oregon, I should say.
Yeah.
That's another example. Some other whites that have rounder textures would be somewhat more French and German, Gewürztraminer, which is a tongue twister, but also is in that, style of viscosity is high, textures, and they're rounder. But those are some recommendations that we'd like you to explore for whites in the fall time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I generally don't, but yeah, now that you mention it, like I could picture a nice Chardonnay. I could picture a nice
Well, let's put this. Let's say you decide that, I know you're not going to go out to eat dinner
hmm,
at a restaurant, but you're going to be at home. Let's say you're cooking fish. Let's say you're cooking seafood, but you still want to have a glass of wine. Chardonnay, in that respects, depending how you prepare your seafood and your fish, would be a good fit, not just for the season, but also for the food pairing. Because if you're going to have red with your fish, depending how you make it, it might not sit well with you,
yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
unless you're that kind that just needs to have anything.
Yeah, I'm almost there, but not quite.
Cool. So then moving into reds, there's a variety of reds that we can discuss that would be a good fit for this time of year.
Yeah,
Um,
that's where I tend to be more like whatever's there, I'm drinking it.
right. But so a couple recommendations this time of year before we get to heavy reds is Pinot Noirs are highly recommended because they're very versatile all year round. You can have them in any season, but they also fit very well where this time of year, their textures, their flavors, they tend to be on the lighter side, but depending where you get them from, they could be a little more fuller. They have a little more sour cherry tart to them. That tartness is really um, appropriate for this time of year with food. So Pinot Noir, whether it's from France or from Oregon or from California. Um, and then we go into some more spicier selections. So there's a grape called Syrah, which I'm sure you've heard of before.
Yeah.
Syrahs hail from, at the moment, from France, from the Rhone Valley, even though there are recordings that Syrah is also the same grape as Shiraz. So Shiraz, which mainly comes from Australia, is
Yeah.
also known as Syrah, but it can go, it's the same grape. And their roots are basically from the Persian area. That's where Syrah comes from.
Oh, really?
That's why there's also an area in Iran that's called Shiraz, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. Oh, wow,
So
I never connected it.
so Syrah, typically the ones from the Rhone area possess uh, full body textures, dark berry fruit, and they also have a spicy little element on the finish. So Syrahs are great um, selections for this time of year. You've probably heard the term Côte de Rhône. Côte de
Hmm.
Rhônes are wines basically from the Rhone Valley, and they're mainly made of Syrah and Grenache. That's a highly recommended. Yes, there you go. Um, so Côte de Rhônes are definitely recommended this time of year because of the structures I just mentioned. Moving from Syrahs and so forth, another grape that we've discussed in the previous segment is Cabernet Franc.
Hmm.
We did that last time. So Cabernet Franc, which is the parent grape that's responsible for producing Cabernet Sauvignon. We talked about that whole
Yeah, yeah.
experiment where they grafted vines from Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc, the white grape. They grafted them and they came up with this hybrid called Cabernet Sauvignon. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're talking about the recommendation that Cabernet Franc, being another red wine that hails from France, from the Loire Valley, has very uh, aromatics of spice, but they also have peppery flavors on the finish.
Mm.
So medium body red wine, a little bit of spice and pepper on the finish, but definitely is soothing and fits the occasion for the fall. That's what's actually in my glass right now, Cabernet Franc.
So, all right. So, I'm going to ask you this. It's getting near Christmas time. The season's in. We're having a nice big snowstorm. You're snuggled up on your couch in your house.
If you're warm.
What are you going to pour?
Are you are you by the are you by the fireplace?
Sure.
Yeah. So you want something that's warming and heartening to you. So deeper reds that have a lot of structure and flavor. I would say a California red Zinfandel, not to be confused
Mm.
with white Zinfandel, would be a big recommendation. Classic California Cabernet Sauvignon would be another selection. Very deep, rich, robust reds. And these are wines that I would recommend having them even after dinner, not with dinner, because full body wines, really, in my opinion, can fill you up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Having a glass of a full body red wine sitting by the fireplace on its own and just sipping it and taking your time is
On that, well, now that you mention that, like I've been attracted to those full-bodied like um red
red.
wines more and more lately, and now I'm starting to realize that like I just don't want it with my dinner and I drink it after.
Yeah. Well,
So that makes sense what you're saying, yeah, because I didn't really put it together, but it
they,
sounds.
they they fill you up pretty quickly because there's so much going on. But
Well,
if you've always
now I bypass food altogether. I just drink wine.
so you're on a liquid diet.
Healthy,
Beautiful.
but they
And
are filling. That's the point, you know.
they're filling. But again, going back to your scenario of what to have. So obviously full body red wines, whether they be California, and there's full body red wines that you can pick from all over the world. In Europe, if you're a fan of European wines, if
Mhm.
you go to France, full body wines are basically from the Rhone Valley. Um, Wines that are made from a grape called Grenache, those are full body red wines. You go to Italy, typically the south of Italy and Sicily, they produce very rich, robust red wines. Some examples are Primitivo. Some other examples are from Sicily called Nero d'Avola. Those are wines that are very full and robust. So there are different parts of the world that actually make really full, robust, full body red wines. South Africa, Australia. But again, the main point is how do we choose wines with the proper structure and composition so that it suits you? Because at the end of the day, as you keep drinking wine, you're training your palate, you're seasoning your palate,
Mhm.
and as you're drinking, you don't realize this, but you're constantly like seeking what is next. You know, I'm sure you've had the scenario of drinking the same wine for over and over, and then all of a sudden your palate just gets tired of it, and you're
Yep.
looking for that next thing that challenges it,
Yeah.
right? So we're big fans of drinking for the occasion and drinking for the season. So because we're in October and the weather is getting cooler, we're shifting, and it's great to explore wines as you're shifting seasons because it really kind of puts things into perspective of what really, just like food, right? We change our choices with food as the weather gets cooler. We're looking for heartier dishes. We're doing more like stews and soups and possibly braised and meats and so forth.
Hmm.
Same thing with your wine selection. So our goal here is to basically give recommendations and tips on how to maximize the experience. Because often enough we get overwhelmed and we just choose anything for the sake of it because it's too much thought, and we get disappointed pretty quickly because we're overwhelmed with too much
Well, that's
information.
the thing. Like you go from one level, like, and I take myself as the perfect example of this. At one point, when I want to get wine, I used to just go and I used to just get anything that would
Hmm.
catch my eye, and I didn't think much more of it. Then after a few years of drinking and learning a little bit more, then I was like, well, now I want like maybe like a light red and blah blah blah. So it gets a little more, and now the stuff that you're saying is like really where a lot of people, if you're like I used to be, you should really get into this mindset because with a little bit of that thought, with a little bit of the understanding, you could so much more enjoy your selections based
Absolutely.
on the time, based on the season, based on what you're eating, based on so many things.
So if you want to make it very easy and simple for you, always think about the season that we're in. And if you're at a wine shop or a retail shop and you really want to apply this, just ask anybody that works there, what do you recommend for this time of year to drink? And hopefully they will be able to answer. If they can't, it's as easy as doing a Google search, and you'll get great information, and then you can take that information and then even ask those questions. So if your Google search is saying you should be drinking Syrah and wines from the Rhone Valley and Pinot Noir, then at least take that information and ask whoever's working at the retail shop, can you direct me to wines from this category?
You just gave me a good idea for our Urban Wine Club app. We're going to
Ah,
break it all down by season, by temperature, by whatever, and then get it
there
all
you
into the
go.
Google search.
Love it.
We got to do it.
So,
So is this what I showed you a good selection for right now?
so that's an amazing selection. From a reputable producer from the Rhone Valley. These guys out there, they're true to their craft. They farm their own grapes. They practice organic farming, even though they don't go through the certification process to get it labeled because it's expensive. But these are wineries in that part of the world that actually practice organic farming through generations.
What is there is I don't want to change the subject, but is there a downfall into this organic certification being so expensive? Like, wouldn't it be better if it wasn't so expensive so the real organic stuff can be labeled organic? Or am I just,
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy around that, in my opinion. There's a lot of debating going on. Why should it have to be expensive to offer people better choices,
yeah.
right? So hopefully that changes, but at least we can be an outlet for now to kind of, highlight what is organic and not, or
Mhm.
who is actually that we praise for these practices.
And if
And
you're interested in that, anybody watching, there is another SIP clip we did a couple of weeks ago, which addresses natural, organic, and what was the third?
biodynamic.
Yeah, biodynamic. Yeah.
So
So if
biodynamic is, and keep that in mind. If you ever come across wines that are identified as biodynamic, please choose that wine
okay.
because there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes of producing biodynamic. And we just really quickly, what does that mean? Biodynamic wines are basically wines that are produced from winemakers who let nature and astrology take over the process of making wine.
So they only have Sagittarius is picking the grape.
Or it depends. Could be a Libra, could be a Scorpio, but it's basically they align themselves with the stars. I mean, when they do certain things, when they farm, when they pick the grapes, when they produce all that.
Super
It's
cool.
a fascinating world that we'd love to like maybe do a clip and we definitely will bring on representatives of the biodynamic world and
That would be really cool.
let them tell their story and like why and what they're doing.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, and check out that SIP clip as well because we do address it a little bit more than we have today. It was very interesting. I like that one. All right, let me taste this. And
Yeah,
even though I snuck a sip while you were talking.
you're allowed to do that.
Oh yeah, that's a nice. Yeah, I could sit with a sweater on, relaxing and sipping on this would be a very nice feel.
Definitely during Halloween when you're waiting for trick or treaters.
Ooh, that's when I bust out the spooky wine. I just find any label that has a ghost on it.
There you go.
That's how I used to choose every wine, whatever the label would say. Well, that's awesome. That's good because we are in this transitional season, so the weather is changing. I saw some pictures on my social media of people lighting up fireplaces and whatnot. So it's
Fire,
nice to.
yeah, fire pits are like going everywhere. The whole s'mores is in effect. People hanging out, on the weekends around the fire pit. This is it. This is the time of year. Just preparing for the summer, which has already ended, and preparing for what's to come for the winter.
All right. Cool. All right, Foti.
All right.
Thank you so much for the info once again. Always good to learn this stuff. We have in case you guys watch this episode before Thursday, we have a very good, another seasonal, warm, toasty feel webinar with our friend Eric Anderson, who's going to make warm rum punches. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Warm,
I looked at the recipe and those look really good.
deadly.
All right, so we look out for that, and we'll see you guys next time.
Take care, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cool.